tell me something. When did you guys meet?
I had just gone back into, I decided I wanted to be a teacher after I'd graduated from college.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I was attending. I lived in Saginaw at the time. I'd moved back there. And so John happened to be my teacher.
Hmm.
So when I went back in math education,
Mm-hmm.
and so he had quite a different approach than I had envisioned of mathematics, because and it still is. It's very rote and still very, for many people, unexciting. And so when I was turning around the next year, I had my own classroom of students, and I started off teaching them very traditionally, the way I had done very well that way.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I was not getting them excited about math. And so I contacted John at the university and said, hey, actually, before that, I was trying to jazz up my class, my math class, so I went into a teacher supply store. And I recognized this very small manual, 8.5 by 11,
Mm-hmm.
stapled upper left-hand corner, and it said Mathematics Pentathlon, and it had a blue cover, which now represents Division III. And so I started looking at the games. They were just on a mimeographed. I mean, there wasn't much to them as far as, jazz, but I started with my students playing Contig 60 and juggle, and the kids just ate it up. They loved it.
So at this point in time, you're actually teaching what grade?
I was teaching a split of 4th and 5th grade.
4th and 5th grade. So you're teaching them, but you're going to school at the same time.
Actually, I had finished that part of it. So
Okay.
I'd already had the coursework from John in math and some other teachers, of course, in other disciplines. But I remembered, I saw his name on this manual, and I thought, okay, let me try it. And then I got into a game that is currently Stars and Bars, and I needed help. So I gave him a call, and he said, come in and let me come in with your students, and I'll help you out. And so he did, and the kids just loved it. And then that year was our first tournament in 1979.
Yeah.
And so I brought a group of students, and there was another couple teachers that were involved, and that was the first tournament.
Great.
And it was so neat to see students that had not done well with my traditional approach, and they were just so excited, and they did so well, and it really changed me. It changed them.
Fun with a purpose.
Fun with a major purpose. Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit, John. So you're teaching at, you said, Saginaw State.
Saginaw Valley.
Saginaw Valley. And
State College.
And
at the time,
what was the impetus for doing this? You
actually, the thought had come out earlier, and in my coursework with students that were planning to go into teaching, I was presenting them with different ideas of how to use concrete objects in order to represent mathematical ideas.
Right.
Which was current at the time. I was no creator of that necessarily. There are several models that they talk about that were illustrative of different aspects of mathematics. But my thought was, we really aren't using these in a way that's strategic or using any of the ideas of game theory, which of course that's the mathematics part of it. But really, when I looked around, there was nothing out there that was doing that. So I had been saying to my students from way back when I had my degree in the University of Oregon, and then come to Colorado University, and then eventually got to Saginaw Valley. All the time I'd been talking about if we just use games more effectively in classrooms, it would be a way to get the students more engaged and more interested in learning some of the concepts of mathematics. And then I was challenged by the students, and it happened to be 1979 was the International Year of the Child. So I was challenged, well, why don't you show us what you're talking about? So I I built a set of games with a thought structure behind it to make it more than one game. We have chess out there, which is an excellent game, and several other games like that.
Strategy.
That have strategy, but they're not incorporated into the curriculum. So my thought was I wanted to build games that, yes, they're fun in and of themselves, but they also are really taking pieces of the curriculum that we're requiring the students to learn and embed them within these games and set up a bunch of criteria for myself in building these, one of which was I wanted it to be just as fun for adults to play these as kids. Why? Because the thought was in the back of my head that, well, I want the families to be involved too. It wouldn't be just something for classroom use. It would go beyond the classroom walls.
Right.
And that we've achieved over time. Gosh, since 1979, we've had really hundreds of thousands of people that have been involved and use these games at home and as well as in clubs and schools. And so it's really, really grown in that aspect.
So back in this time frame, when you're at Saginaw Valley, were there other professors or colleagues at that time that were with you on this, or were you kind of out there on your own? What was the environment like?
It was more, they didn't understand the purpose why. Much of it was, yeah, that's nice and everything, but why do this? Because in math we had some structured kind of lessons. Teachers were used to a structured lesson where you start here and you end here, and these are the questions you ask, and here's the answers to those questions. And
what Mary alluded to earlier was just kind of rote math.
And it was textbook driven. And it still is. It's
Yes.
an industry.
I know. I've lived through that.
As a parent. Every parent sees that.
As a student.
And as a student.
I drew
And actually, mathematics is the most anxiety-producing part of the curriculum. And so a textbook, the good news in that is that it guides teachers to get through subject matter they despise or are very anxious of. But then the problem is, it takes all the fun and excitement out of math, and it just, very uninteresting. So where John shook things up significantly is he said, well, why don't we, instead of making it textbook driven, why don't we actually make it more that it's, in the form of something that we all love and we all can connect with. And then the other thing that was huge, and I don't think that he realized at the time, that parent hook. Because if you can't change it really from the university standpoint, it's locked in, okay? It's textbook. And even when they tried to change the approach to make it more of a problem-solving thing or whatever, it still was, it was embedded. So get the parents excited.
So you had...
Well, actually, that became a sociological problem as you try to move the program out, because teachers were used to having programs that were theirs, and then they had the authority to give it to the parents. They were the ones that could speak with authority to parents. The notion of doing something with parents collaboratively to have an end result was really, I don't want to say it was foreign to them, but it wasn't the kind of way they did business.
Not at all.
And weren't
Not
used
at
to
all.
the
So
structure.
let me back up. I'm not sure I really understand. Your educational background, did you have any kind of a psychology or sociology background?
Well, I came up at a time where it was very intriguing in math education, because it's mathematics based, obviously, but it's also the education, the psychology behind learning. And what we're missing today in a lot of areas is the psychology that goes behind all of this.
Right.
Because it's quite a body of research that says what we should be doing. The problem is we're not executing it on a larger scale. This is one way to do it. There could be a variety of other things you could do. But this is a way that the impact of this is greater than I even realized. And the part of the parent issue was I was just thinking that first notion I said to you of having the parents enjoy the game as much as the kids. But as we were trying to build this into a final event, a tournament, which has now become a national annual event, I had no idea of how much this was going to impact the socialization
The
of
culture.
the parents
Yeah.
with the students, and many of them learning just simply almost the legal framework that's involved in something like running a tournament, where they come to play 5 games, 5 different games, with 5 students from somewhere else, not their own school building even, and then how to respond to challenges where one student thinks it's right, one thinks it's not played that way, and then how to settle those challenges, having backup systems. So it's very, very much like a legal structure, a mini legal society as we run a tournament. People are very surprised when they come there how organized it appears as far as the processing, but how disorganized it looks when you come in there and there's kids all over the place. They can't imagine having hundreds and hundreds of kindergarten and first grade students, on a floor, or third graders. It goes all the way up
Organized
to seventh
chaos,
grade.
yes.
Organized chaos became our terminology because.
So I want to come back though. You talk about that early days. You're talking with your peers. They don't understand. Why would you do that? What?
Not in this way. I mean,
Right.
at the time there were using manipulatives in order to show the analogous aspects of, let's say, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Let's just talk about that for now. So they had that out there, but they never thought of using those manipulatives that might be doing that, but within a game format where there's actually two to 4 people. We suggest 4 when in a learning stage. People trying to compete to get to a goal where you're using these things strategically, not in a chance manner, but the more you understand of the game, the better you do in performance.
So did you feel somewhat like an outsider? You're trying to bring in this new concept and idea?
Yeah, because I guess I off the top of my head, I can't get an analogy, but it's sort of like people were in sailboats, and I was the first one to put an engine in a boat or something.
And they thought you were crazy, and you launched off on your own.
And this was
you can't
later,
sail a
not
boat.
that-
You can't
yeah.
sail a boat without sails.
Yeah. This is that happened maybe about a couple years later that it started to really affect kids. And the other piece of it that was really important was that you were talking about manipulatives or physical models of math concepts. So actually, and there's a very large body of research that shows this now. Back in the day, there wasn't a body of research to prove this, but the importance of using models to embody mathematical concepts so students start understanding what they mean. And that way they remember it and they can apply mathematical concepts and principles. And so that was another huge piece of it, was using these models in order to do that. And what John also incorporated, which was huge, was using spatial geometric principles in the games. That area is now highly correlated to going on in math and in problem solving. So, and the research still shows that that area of mathematics using spatial geometric principles is what's avoided in most classrooms. And so you take away that piece of it, and then how can students really make other connections that are important and have them go on in math? So no wonder they're anxious about mathematics, because they don't have that important foundation. So these games incorporate not only computational principles, but also spatial geometric principles.
Right.
Yeah.
So
It's come a long way.
So now you're out there on your own. You're out on the sailboat. You've left shore, but were people coming with you at that point, or when other people started to see, hey, this is having an impact?
It's sort of like what's going to move the boat. They didn't know what was going to move this boat, and actually, it's the engine of this boat is the teachers. It is the parents. It is the kids.
Right.
It's the students that come there well prepared, to get involved with the tournament. And then the boat moves, and when it moves, it starts getting others attracted to it.
That looks interesting, so I might go with it.
Yeah, let's do this.
So in those early days, we went from we've developed the games to this concept of doing some kind of a tournament. Tell me about that. Was it 6 kids in a room? That was first tournament?
Actually, that was from the beginning, because it was the International Year of the Child.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was doing was trying to design the games pretty much in the context that they are now.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty close. But they were 5 per every 2 grade breakout. So K1 would have 5 games, 2, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, 7th. That's as far as I went.
20 games.
20 games.
Yeah.
And how long did that take to develop all 20?
Well, actually, the rumination of this was taking place over years, but the culminating event took a year.
So this was going on in your head, you're thinking about it, but actually turning it into a concrete
But sitting down at
games.
a table and actually starting to write and
What's that
draft.
span of time?
I'd say
About a
3.
year.
3 years from starting to think seriously about using games as a vehicle to actually production of this.
I think about that because, I mean, you're starting with a blank page. I mean, you got an idea of what you want to do, but to organize that, and so then you built prototypes, I assume, and you got a few people. Maybe did you get
What she was
colleagues?
talking about earlier was a prototype, basically, because it was just a basic.
We'll pick back up. So now we're talking about over this 3-year period. You say, okay, I'm going to start building the game. So you still got your day job. You're still teaching classes, and you're doing this in your spare time and in the evenings and wherever else you can. Were you using your classes then to test some of these out, or?
No.
Okay.
No, this was a separate kind of thing. But I was building it for the International Year. I was teaching at Saginaw Valley, as what we said earlier at the time, and this was an event that I wanted the college to represent to the community. So we weren't able in the first year, obviously, because it was such a strange bird, to get very many people. But by the second year already, we had hundreds involved, and we had taken out space in a mall that's up in the Saginaw area called Fashion Square Mall.
Wow.
And so we decided that rather than going around trying to get advertisement, why not run the tournament right in the mall and then everybody can see?
Right.
Exactly.
So you invented viral? Viral
This is our
videos,
own-
and boom, you
that
said within a
was-
year this
that
thing
was
took
the
off.
more intimate viral.
Wow.
Or you didn't have to get online to see it, just come to the mall.
Awesome. So you're doing this first tournament at the mall.
Yeah.
And the concept also
First big one, anyway.
was that you had a tournament as a culminating event. So that students, and you were trying to go through teachers, and then of course teachers and the kids would affect the parents. So if students have to, throughout the course of the school year, prepare, they have to spend more time dealing with it. So it's not just like a game they play a few times and that was fun and on we go. It was that they actually played it throughout those 5 games throughout the course of the school year.
Right.
And they also are doing that to have a culminating event. And so that it's kind of like, in athletics, in music, there'll be a recital. Well, that means they have to get better at it and pursue that. Look at different things, ideas, strategies, options, and then be good enough to do that so that they're going to be in the spring. Usually, it takes place anywhere from the end of March through early May, and so that was what was really neat and different.
So from Saginaw, now then it spread its wings and came down to Indiana. To give you the short history of that, and then into Texas is the most recent, where they are exploding down there with interest in terms of setting up what we call centers. Centers are basically a center of activity with people that we designate as leaders within that area that bring forth this culminating factor. It's not in malls anymore. It's now in school buildings typically gyms.
High school gyms, yeah,
Gyms that,
large ones.
that can be seen on
Sure.
YouTube in
Yeah.
some of our videos. But they are the child, the pentathlete we call them, is matched with somebody else from another school of same age, and then they play the 5 different games with somebody different, and then the resulting factor of win and loss is what determines what kind of medal or honor they get at a tournament. They are all honored, so they're all presented with an award at the end. And it's become a big thing. The schools come in with their posters and everything. We do a big march into the gym after the event occurs, and it's become something that all schools prepare for very, very well.
And the other piece of it that's important is we recognize all students, and it's based on a point system, but all children are recognized. They come up, they take a bow, they take pride in not only their own achievements, but also the achievements of their classmates. That's what's really, the character development aspect of this program is huge, because it's not just, the cognitive aspects of it. It's team building. It's
Right.
looking at, treating your opponents with courtesy and respect, and just treating the adults. We have game monitors for each of the 5 games. That they're actually there not only to observe but to address challenge situations. So it's just the support that you see of we call the students pentathletes, not just because they're playing the math pentathlon games and they're there at competition for that purpose, but also it's the spirit with which they compete.
Right.
And that's huge. And parents...
So both of you have pursued your doctoral degrees, which that takes a huge amount of personal commitment and perseverance to do that. But as you think back on this thing that you've created and nurtured over the last several decades, what's the one thing that you would look back on to, okay, you got maybe a high school student right now who's looking into their future. What bit of advice would you give them to be out there? In this case, like you said, you had generated an idea. Your peers weren't necessarily on board with you at the time. They didn't understand it. What advice would you give them to push through that, to persevere?
Yeah, because there still is quite a bit of learning to do on what we're about. But I think people are feeling it every day, that the world's changing in such a rapid rate, that the one thing we can give to our children is learn how to deal with change, and then how to strategize within change. We call that active problem solving. That just as you're trying to resolve a problem, things are changing while you're doing that. That is such a relevant skill today for the fast-changing world. There's not enough that I can say about that.
So that's for the parent. What about the child?
Well,
Well,
it is
yeah,
related
it is
to
related
that,
to that.
because what John, I think, is
Good.
getting to
Uh-huh.
is that it's persistence and flexibility. And these games do, and I'm going to get to the high school student too, but if you can, from a very early age, so kindergarten, first grade, you're already getting students to be persistent yet flexible about how they think about a problem.
So if you're going down a certain strategic path and you realize, hey, I'm going to run into some problems, the flexibility is I may have to
Move
shift
over
strategies.
another way.
That's right.
Or to
keep-
step back 2 steps. I think one of the hardest things for a human being to learn is that in order to go forward, I got to go back a couple of steps. That is hard because your ego is so involved in those 2 steps you took that to say, well, no, I'm not going to get anywhere that way. And to recognize I need to go back and go off a different
And so
way.
in the game, it's relevant in the game too.
That's
Very
right.
much so.
I've got a strategy, I'm moving in, and I think I'm going to go for the win, but I realize that's going to maybe not get me there, so I need to back up.
Or
That's
the
right.
other thing that you learn in chess and in many of our games is the sacrifice play, where you give up something that's of value in order to get to the goal. You don't like to give up things of value. You will usually want to keep the things that are treasured, but you might have to give up a treasure in order to achieve a goal. And that's very hard to learn too, because most of us, once we're very possessive. Once we have it, we want to keep it, and we won't let go. And so we have to learn how to let go in order to get to a better place. It's a very difficult thought, and important in terms of functioning in the world as it's changing. I think we hear every day the difficulties that youth are having with change, and it's because we're still in many places going to a very rigid, structured thing that says everything has to be done this way. And
Standardized testing.
Yes, yeah.
And there's no give or take that way. It's got to be this way or the highway. You can't do it some other way. The analogy I use is in terms of intelligence. Intelligence can't be measured by a paper pencil test. There's just no way. It would be as silly to say, well, we're going to take this great figure skater and we're going to design a paper pencil test to know whether or not a person is going to be a great figure skater. Everybody would laugh. Everybody would say, what? You can't do that. Well, that's what you do with intellect. Intellect, it doesn't succumb to that unidimensional thing called the test. Even the standardized tests, they're the worst of all. They're only done because of the issues that we have in statistics of how we're trying to make the test reliable. And we do certain things to have that happen. But that doesn't help us understand the wealth of what a human intellect is and what that person can do mentally with their thought structures and how they put it together. You can give pieces of a puzzle to several different people, and the way they put it together is going to be different. They might come up with the same result. They may not, but some of them might come up with the same result, but they went at it in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And you're going back to that high school student, okay? So if you bring students up, as we think of our pentathlon family and our pentathletes from a young age, as math is a way of thinking. And we were talking about persistence, flexibility, and John with all the different approaches to a particular problem. And they are thinking this way over the course of their, elementary into middle school life. And now they're in high school. They already have that way of persistence, looking at a goal, staying with the goal, but knowing that you're going to have obstacles in your way, how to look at different options, how to approach it in a different way. And also to have a spirit of inventiveness or a spirit that you have of confidence that you can do it. That it's okay to have some problems in your way. That's natural, that's part of life. If you can just have that whole approach in thinking about not just math in the classroom per se, but just in everything in life, even personal issues, then that changes how you go about things. And one of the things that I hear from coaches and parents, teachers, is that it really does change the kids, and they actually start thinking of themselves as leaders. And there's some research now to show that if you feel good about mathematics, you're typically going to do better in a lot of other subject matters because of the confidence that you have. And then if you have confidence, that it just makes sense. It goes hand in hand with leadership.
Right. So
then you start saying, I can do something differently. I don't have to stay within what everything is textbook, the norms. I can look at something and say, I think this is a cool idea. And I think I have a way that I can make it happen. And so that's how I would respond to that, to the high school student,
Yeah. Well, John, Mary, thank you for sharing some of your story and the time we've had here today. I think it's just, thank you. It's just a gift you've given me to listen to this.
Thank you.
Jeff, thank you so much.